what I found, and you probably found too, you just can't tell people to just change overnight.
It's
So
not realistic. And they may have an addiction, like Joan Iflin would say. They may have a processed food or sugar addiction. So you can't tell an alcoholic, just don't drink. I mean, it's not that
right.
simple. Right?
Exactly, because the sugar dragon is real.
It's real.
So why do you think we have such a big we're so difficult with us for obesity? Because obesity is really at the heart, I think, of most of this.
Yeah, it is.
And
I think,
go ahead.
yeah. Well, I just think it's the messaging has been wrong, and we take our fingers and we point at people. And if you think about it, when was the last time you went to a gym and you didn't see an overweight person on a treadmill? You see overweight people on a treadmill all the time.
True.
So you can't say that they don't care and that they're not working hard enough. If anything, I mean, I have people that I know personally, and I'll see them on Facebook running marathons and they're still obese.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Yeah, we see that too.
You're like, you look at it in your brain, even as an obesity doc, my brain still can't understand that.
Yeah.
Because a marathon is serious business. But what I found is that, and I learned this in my obesity training, you can't out-exercise a bad diet, right? So I think what is wrong is the information they were given. And if you just grab 100 people and say, so you plan on working, your New Year's resolution is to work on your weight, right? And what do people say? They usually say gym before they even say diet.
Absolutely.
So most people, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So they think that's going to, and that's like, of that nest and rope stuff I mentioned earlier, that's the least important thing. It's weight loss maintenance is what exercise does. So I think part of the problem is they don't get the right information, and they do that calories in, calories out.
Yep.
They get frustrated. And then the more you gain and lose, the more you're actually going up a notch every time. And your metabolic rate and everything gets more dysfunctional, and it gets harder and harder so I think it's the information and then the lack of coaching.
Correct.
I think they need coaching, and we need to have a society where every clinician has the ability to, it should be covered by insurance, and everybody should be allowed to have a coach rather than talking about their relationship or their health.
Yes.
And then that way people will have, especially if it's an addiction, if you have a food addiction, this is a lifetime issue.
Yes.
So you need coaching for the rest of your life to overcome the addiction. So that's why I think people have struggled. And then communities of color, some of my neighbors in the neighborhood I lived in, the kids didn't walk around with, potato chips and some like colored, juice, right? Mm-hmm. They walked around with, like celery and carrots. So, because it was a different kind of neighborhood, right? It wasn't an African American. But so what happens is the people of color start off early on with the addictive foods, and it just kind of builds and builds. And we show love through our food. And here, honey, I just made your favorite cake or pie. And we have these cultures.
So true.
And we keep a cake on the counter.
Yes.
If you don't have a cake on the counter,
candy jar.
Yes.
Right.
It is a challenge. Trust me. We know that's one of the reasons why we started Brown Women Wellness. Let me ask you a question. What does your diet consist of?
It's very simple. In fact, most days I don't eat breakfast, so I'm a big intermittent fasting guy.
Yes.
So I usually eat between 12 and 8. I just think that's easily one of the most transformational things you can do is learn how to intermittently fast. It's not for everybody, but for me, being busy, oh my God, if I don't have, and then, like Thursday, I didn't have my first meal till 5 because I'm thinner. I have to eat those 2 meals. So I ate at 5 and then I ate at 8. But I'm going to tell you something. Most days, if I'm working from home, I may have the eggs and the bacon and the sausage, and I may have some cauliflower tater tots or some cauliflower rice with it if I'm going to eat something with it. Mm-hmm. Today, I actually, because of the gala, I actually had leftover pork chops that were baked in the oven, and I ate that with some eggs. So I ate 2 pork chops with some eggs. Some days I'll take a 2 pounds of beef I know I sound like a carnivore. I'll take 2 pounds of beef, and I'm pretty much almost there the way it's going.
Well, there are some carnivores who say carnivore is the way to go. We could talk about that on a whole nother podcast.
Oh my God, yeah. And I only say for those listening, if you try it, I have no problem with you trying it because every carnivore I know is doing really well.
That's what I know. They are healthy.
Yeah, so trust me.
And it's on the opposite end of vegan. So,
It's the opposite. It's all crazy. But when I have my so I'll do a pound of ground beef, which sounds like a lot, but it's really not. A pound of ground beef. I'll take the other half for the next day, and then I'll have some eggs or something with that. And then, but I tend to, because I'm not a carnivore, I tend to have 1 or 2 vegetables with my animal.
Don't you feel guilty?
Night.
Don't you feel guilty if you don't have veggies?
I'm still, I had the black carnivore, A-Day, A-Day Fox. It's spelled EDA, and they have really encouraged me to at least be open to it. So I do feel a little guilty, especially when you're studying nutrition and all your professors are like obsessed with vegetables, right? but I'm not afraid. Okay. I'm not afraid anymore. So I listen to my body. My body says I like when you eat meat without the starch and the sugar. So I listen to my body and I feel better because when I finish talking during the podcast, I got to go study. If I had gone to Subway, gotten a sandwich, that's bread, gotten some chips, that's,
you'd be sleeping.
So I'd be knocked out.
Yeah.
I'd be sleeping until the gala and would have studied. Yeah. So I need that mental clarity. And fat fuel is always the better fuel for your brain.
Absolutely.
Your brain is you need 70%. It's about 60 to 70% of your brain is fat. So your brain's like, I like fat. So, so that's how I see all of that. And dinner again is animal, 2 non-starchy sides, no flour, no cornmeal, and no barbecue sauce and stuff like that. Animal, 2 non-starchy sides. That's it.
Do you still indulge in dairy?
Yeah, I not like milk. And what I've learned in my training is that a lot of people can tolerate. Like this is a stat that's mind-boggling. 75% of African Americans are lactose intolerant. 75%. And most of us stop making lactase to break down lactose when we're somewhere about 6 to 7 years of age. So we really should be drinking milk per se. However, what they found is that there's a tolerance we can take. So if you don't have too much of it, I can't remember the exact amount, maybe 16 grams or so. I can't translate that for you. But if you take a small amount of milk, your body tolerates it fine. But then when you go over a certain amount, it just causes a lot of issues. So what I tend to do is I'll have coconut milk or, almond milk and things like that if I'm looking for that. Obviously, the yogurts, they tend to have less of the lactose, so you can tolerate that. All the hard cheeses in particular are much better when it comes to lactose. But cheeses in general, you get rid during the fermentation process, you get rid of a lot of the lactose. So you can definitely do dairy. And those like heavy, some of the creams and stuff you can tolerate. So I think the key is to understand which ones bother you and stay away. Now, for people, if you talk to the black carnivore, she would say her allergies may flare up with dairy in general. So she's trying to push, so you have to, and everybody's different. And that's the beauty of this. There are some vegetarians listening and they're like, well, I feel great. Well, if you feel great and you're a vegetarian, you should probably just stick with that because our genetic genome is going to be different. I just know for most people, particularly in communities of color, they need to avoid starch, sugar, and a lot of grains, and they need to cut back on dairy. And so I think that you have to listen to your body. And for me, I generally don't drink milk, but I will have these other things like cheeses and things like that periodically.
There are so many things I could talk to you about, Dr. Hampton.
So many things.
We're going to have to bring you back, and you'll probably be a frequent guest as we grow because there's so many things that we need our audience to know about, nutrition, the right way to eat, doing swaps, all that kind of stuff. We're big on swaps at Brown Women Wellness, swapping out, the starches for something else.
Absolutely.
We actually have a whole download on that. So we're gonna try to wrap it up here, but I have one last question. We just want to know if you had one thing if you could think of one thing our audience could change to improve their health immediately, what would that be?
Yeah, it's a great question because all of the nest and rope concepts are important. I'll just go with what happened this morning. So I normally go to bed at 9:30 and wake up at 4:30. And it's early because I can accomplish quite a bit when everybody